Rebel Force Radio presents.
I am Boba Fett.
Boba Fett.
Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect.
Boba Fett.
This is Rebel Force Radio's The Book of Boba Fett. After Show.
That's right, Chut, and welcome back to the Mandalorian After Show. So great to be with you.
Excuse me?
Yeah, the Mandalorian After Show.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
I think I just jumped in time, didn't I?
It was the Mandalorian After Show, wasn't it? No, it was a crossover event. It was a fantastic crossover event, except one problem. Boba Fett forgot to show up to his own show this week. So nobody, but he told him. And I got to tell you, I have a hot take on this episode that I want to get off my chest right away. But I don't want to steal anyone's thunder because there's so much to break down this week on Book of Boba Fett After Show. Seriously, yes, of course, it's the Book of Boba Fett After Show. We're so glad to be with you. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Lots to discuss. Kind of like last week's episode in a way where there's a lot that's kind of given in the dialogue, some clues and some things like we finally kind of figured out or were told what the Night of a Thousand Tears was. We actually had visual representation of this. So all kinds of great exposition, I think, that was delivered in this episode. But there are some larger points, and it does, it really does force us as viewers to compare these two shows by literally giving you an episode of The Mandalorian within the Book of Boba Fett. But anyway, all that and so much more this week. And like I said, I have a hot take coming up, but before I want to do introductions as they are in order, as we've got so many new people joining us, new members of Patreon. We've got a lot of new podcast listeners, and I really believe that it has so much to do with these after shows that we've been doing and you all spreading the word. So thank you very much. My name is Jason, and with me, as always, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Yeah, let's get into some Mando talk here this week on the Book of Boba Fett After Show. Amazing. What really immediately tickled my fancy was the fact that we got our asses off Tatooine finally this season. Not for the whole episode, but for the first half of the episode. And what a first half of the episode it was. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. The whole episode was great, but I'm particularly fond of that first half of the episode. And I love the payoff of the second half of the episode. But, the action really did slow down quite a bit, considering we took 10 minutes building that N1 starfighter. 10 minutes from the moment she pulled the cloak off of the tarp off of the fuselage and everything to the moment when it actually took flight. But man, when it took flight, that was great.
Yeah.
That was so great.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only downtime. I mean, the stuff with the armorer was also considerably slow compared to where we had just been with that crazy fight.
Packed with lore.
Oh, yes, packed with lore. We're going to unpack all that lore in just a minute. Do want to welcome our call screener, also Tyler Page joining us. Hey. Tyler, ready to take your calls and get a sense of what you want to talk about, and we'll do our best to get you on. You guys, it's an embarrassment of riches because we've got so many calls, so many super chats, so much going on in the regular chat and within the comments. So we're going to do our best to get as much in as possible. So please, the number to call, 708-866-1737. Get in the queue. How you doing tonight, Tyler? I should ask you.
I'm doing great. Warming up with Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Or Mando. One of them.
All right, man. Well, as always, we'll check in with you a little bit later and see what you thought. But I think the switchboard is now officially open, so get to it. Want to give the tail of the tape as we do here to set the stage. We are talking about, obviously, the Book of Boba Fett. But you know what? If you didn't know any better, you might not know. I'm expecting some friends to call up and say, I talk about sort of my casual Star Wars fans, and then they typically give me a ring a day or two after the show's going on, and I have to answer all their questions, and I know I'm going to get lots of questions about, wait a minute. So is this now turning into Mandalorian? Is that what's going on? Was it? I know the questions out there, but we are talking about Book of Boba Fett. Chapter 5, original air date, January 26, 2022. Just a bantha hair over 50 minutes. And this is the episode that is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, by the way. That was misattributed last week on a few websites. This is the episode, and it was written by Jon Favreau. And Jim, they don't waste any time in this episode. There was no bookend of Boba Fett, really. Boba Fett wasn't in the show at all, but I mean, I think some of us knew that Mando was going to be in this series at some point. Mm-hmm. I never in my wildest dreams thought it was going to be literally an entire episode that feels like a prologue to season 3 of Mandalorian, but that's exactly what we got. Again, no bookend. They do kind of tease you. I love the way they had sort of the Mandalorian figure with the curtain in front of it, and he bursts through. It's not Boba Fett, it's Mandalorian. So right off the bat, it's no longer Boba's show.
That's very interesting. It is really an episode of Mandalorian season 2.5. It's because it's essential. It's essential to the story of the Mandalorian. This was no mere cameo. This was essential and explained so much about some of the questions I had that were presented to us in Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2. You brought up the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Right.
Even actually having visual representation of it. We're not just being told what happened. We actually see it.
Yeah, right. And
how brilliant.
It was very cool. It did remind me a little bit of the Terminator, right? It had kind of that post-apocalyptic thing going on, and those were Death Troopers, right? With the glowing eyes.
They were K2SO droids.
They were K2SOs. Okay, all right, yeah.
Whatever they called them.
Whatever, yeah. But it looked cool, as they were going through and looking for any unfortunate survivors of this incredible bombing raid that rained down on the entire planet. But something that the armor said, by the way, so great seeing Emily Swallow back as the armor, at least hearing her as the armorer. I just, it was one of those where I thought, will they bring her back? And I was just really happy that they brought her back.
So surprised we didn't see her in season 2 of The Mandalorian.
That's right. It's been a long time, right?
And that's another question that was presented to us in the Mandalorian seasons. But the Night of 1,000 Tears. What happened to the armorer? What is the Coven completely gone? All of these things were answered.
Yeah, and one thing that was fascinating was how the two Mandalorian sects split. And it was a result of this Night of 1,000 Tears because she claims that the only survivors were the ones that were on the moon of Concordia,
right,
who were following the creed. So there's this idea that, they may have been spared because they were following the creed, the way. Mm-hmm. We also get a little bit about Bo-Katan and her, what sounds like maybe a very brief reign as the leader of the Mandalorian people. And the armorer implies that it was because of the way she acquired the Darksaber, not in combat, that essentially, I mean, she didn't use this term, but it was almost like it was like a curse. A curse fell upon the Mandalorian people, and they all, what was her term? They were all shattered to the winds or scattered to the winds or something like that.
Yes.
So not looking so good for Bo-Katan as far as a leader.
No, she didn't win. And this is answering all the questions from the first few seasons. She didn't win that Darksaber in a duel. She didn't win it in the way of the Mandalorian. She was gifted it. And then she lost it to Moff Gideon. Did that happen during the Night of 1,000 Tears? or did it happen prior? Because as she says, the armorer, she says that if the Darksaber isn't won by Creed, then the Mandalorian people will fall.
Right.
And so I thought she was talking about Creed Bratton from The Office, and I'm like, this isn't adding up. This is the Favreau verse is going in a completely different direction than I thought. But then I was like, no,
Creed. Yeah, someone's got to do a little YouTube mashup where every time she mentions that we get a good Creed. Bratton
yeah, maybe
moment.
I'll figure out something on the audio end for RFR later this week. But that was just like, it all brings together a lot of the situations that were presented in Star Wars Rebels.
Yep.
It bridges that gap that has been left wide open for the last 2 years, considering this history of the Darksaber. And the fact that there are Mandalorians who stick to the rigid dogma that almost makes them religious zealots when it comes to being a Mandalorian, keeping the helmet on, yada yada.
Well, it's definitely a fundamentalist kind of way of looking at things. Now, you want to talk about zealots? The fact that she gives Din Djarin the heave ho, after he defends the honor of the Darksaber and maintains the Darksaber. Now, I got to throw this out because this to me was the one moment in the episode where it just didn't add up, because I thought that her bringing up the "have you taken off your helmet" was very, very abrupt. I have a theory about it, but did it strike you as kind of out of place, forced, shoehorned in? What was your take on that all of a sudden? So he defeats Vizsla, clearly.
Yeah.
He's still the rightful owner of the Darksaber. And then she says, okay, this is done. By the way, Vizsla, have you ever taken off your helmet? Never.
Yeah.
Din Djarin.
Yeah.
And he's like,
geez.
yeah, right.
Yeah. I love when he gives people the silent treatment. That's always funny. It happened twice in this episode. It also happened with the New Republic X-Wing cops who were
X-Wing cops.
The Tatooine system there. Well, that's why Cara Dune called that pilot Carson Teva. She called him Blue because he's a cop. That's why she was calling him that.
Oh, I thought she called him Flatfoot.
No, she did not call him Flatfoot. I apologize to all the
I'm teasing, of
the
course.
men of the Shield who are listening to this show.
Oh my God. No.
It did seem kind of random. Like, because nobody said if you win the Darksaber honorably in a fight, then you get to keep it. Unless you took your helmet off, then you're disqualified.
Well, right,
but nobody. He walked out of there with it without any sort of
right. It wasn't like they. Yeah, so that was enough to get him kicked out of the coven, I believe is their term. Yeah. That got him kicked out of the coven, but it didn't. They're like, wow, but we still can't take the Darksaber. But here's my theory. I just want to throw this out. She mentions that there was a prophecy that the one who has the Darksaber would rise up like a mythosaur and reclaim Mandalore.
Right.
And then she basically guilt quests Mando to go back to Mandalore. So did she ask him this? Was it a bit of a loaded question? Like, she knows, and this is her way of getting him, because he has to go and cleanse himself in the waters beneath the mines of Mandalore, and he believes that it's all destroyed. I think Armorer knows that that's a lot of myth, that there's still a lot of Mandalore that survives, and they're waiting for this mythosaur, or the prophecy to be fulfilled, and that she realizes that perhaps Din Djarin actually is the one that the prophecy speaks about.
See, I looked at it a little bit different kind of way. she does reveal that they want to reclaim their planet.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also heard their planet has been turned to glass. So, and also Din says that the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore no longer exist. And she says, this is the way. Without confirming or denying they exist. But Mandalore says, Din Djarin says they don't exist. So I looked at it as her way of saying, look, there's no way you can come back to this fundamental group of Mandalorian zealots unless unless you go to this place that doesn't exist. So you're out, pal. You're done. And that's really tricky for them because he's the one who has the Darksaber. Paz Vizsla could not prove he had the strength to take him down. And also I noted that you see the Mando vibroblade actually vibrating.
Yeah.
Bzzz,
yeah.
Like he's going to give him a shave or something. But it's like actually vibrating. You could actually see it. And they added a sound effect and everything. I'm like, boy, we've heard about vibroblades for years and years in Star Wars, but I don't think we actually ever saw one vibrating. That's really wild.
That jumped out at me as well. Now, Frank in the chat, give credit where it's due. He says, and he is correct, that and I remember this in the dialogue, the armorer does say that it's not enough to just win the battle, but you win by the creed. So you have to be following the creed as well as be able to defend the Darksaber. But still, I think my theory might hold up because they didn't make any effort at all to take the Darksaber from him. So it doesn't disqualify for him as being the rightful bearer of the Darksaber. A couple other things to just throw out here as we're setting the table for your calls, by the way, 708-866-1737. Some more things to unpack is they consider Moff Gideon a murderer of millions of Mandalorians.
Yeah.
So this guy is a public enemy. We also find out, heck, I'm burying the lead here. Where the heck is Moff Gideon? Well, he's being questioned by the New Republic. Yeah. So he is I don't want to say a hostage, but he's been taken into custody and he is being interrogated. I think
interrogated.
Yeah.
What I found interesting at this moment was Mandalorian said that Moff Gideon could be executed for his crimes. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So the New Republic practices the death penalty. And we've never heard the death penalty spoken of except once before in Star Wars, and that's in the original from 77 when Dr. Evazan said, we have the death sentence on 12 systems. But that's not like an imperial death sentence. Those are individual systems who have proclaimed they would put the death sentence into use. And of course, we knew that Palpatine had granted the governors territorial control over their regions and everything. So I think then a lot of outlaw law was established during that time.
Well, we could probably assume that something akin to the Nuremberg trials probably happened in the New Republic, as many imperial officers were probably tried and convicted and likely, killed. What's the word I'm looking for? Executed for crimes against humanity or whatever the term, the Star Warsy term might be. So I can imagine something like that. And they're also wanting to root out the remnants. Oh, here's another thing I thought was kind of cool was their take on Baskar and how it should be used for armor only and not weaponry because essentially it's just too dangerous. It poses too much of a threat to Mandalorians, which I thought was it's like an honor system. Like that's cheating.
Yeah. I mean, the armor is their protection.
Yeah.
It provides them with their influence. It provides them with their occupation sometimes. And as we see with Mandalorian bounty hunters, but that's a real contradiction then to have Baskar being forged into a spear or other kind of armor because it will pierce Baskar.
Right.
So that makes Mandalorians vulnerable, and that's why it had to go away and smelted into Grogu. What do you think's in it? What kind of
All right.
Baskar protection will little Grogu have?
Okay.
There's a big clue in the episode.
Yeah, I distinctly saw, chain link
Yes.
being made. And so my hunch is that it is a chain for the little round ball that is on the shifter for Grogu
Really?
that he would
Now,
wear
I was
around his
thinking
neck.
More in terms.
That's what I was thinking.
I was thinking more in terms of like a medieval kind of thing, like chainmail that he would wear.
Oh, like a chainmail shirt
Yeah.
or something. That's cool.
Because that little ball of cloth that she handed him, by the way, tied in a knot to make it look like Grogu's head.
Oh,
Pick
wasn't
up
that
on
a
that?
sweet moment when he's looking down after he sees the green Rhodian child? Thank
we got a
you. We
green Rhodian.
finally got a green Rhodian the way God intended.
Yeah, and during that sequence, Mandalorian Din Djarin, he looked at a little green kid and thought about his own little green kid, and he was missing his little buddy.
I so
baby
related
Yoda.
to that because I remember, and I used to say this to you, Jim, all the time when the kids were real little, and we would go, remember we used to go on together on trips, like to go to conventions. Seems like forever ago. But I would always say, like, I would always be so excited, and then I would get to the airport and I would see some cute kid, and I'd be like, oh, I miss my kids, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I totally relate to what he's thinking. Now I'd be like, yeah, next plane, get me out of here.
Yeah.
I'll
Please,
see him
get me
later.
away from all kids. Thank you. Yeah, that is how parenthood works to a T.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's good. What's going to be like in Lord of the Rings, they had that chain link vest that they wore. It was called like Mithril or something. If I haven't seen
Mithril is the blue guy played by Horatio Sands.
Something like that, though. It sounds like that. It's like somebody in the chat. You guys know the Lord of the Rings. Just tell me what I'm trying to think of here. I have Glenn.
Yeah, because one of the hobbits wears the chain link shirt.
Yeah. The main hobbit does. It is chainmail vest, often part of the armor. Just look at Norman Conquest. I don't even know if that's even has anything to do with Star Wars. Oh, Mithril is what it's called.
Mithril.
Hey, I was
you
close.
were so close.
I was
one letter off.
Mithril. Oh, everyone's saying Mithril, Jimmy, idiot, Mithril. Yeah, and not that
That's a
SNL
good
actor.
idea. That's a real good idea because Grogu is so vulnerable. I don't know. I guess that would look silly. Like what is he like wearing it like bling? You know, he's wearing the shifter ball. But that was the first thing that came to my mind. Oh, he's making a necklace to hang the shifter ball.
Well, I mean, that to me seems like they're making another Baskar weapon because, like, Grogu would then take the chain off. He'd like start swinging that ball around.
Oh yeah, Wicket style or Ewok
smacking
style.
People upside the head. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that would be just like shooting themselves in the foot. But that's what it looks like. Yoda's or Baby Yoda's going to get because it was such a small little package. I thought naturally it would be a helmet. But no, not in that little ball like.
And that would look. I mean, that would look real. That would look real weird, wouldn't it? Like Baby Yoda. You can't cover up that face. That face launched 1,000 ships and sold $1 billion worth of toys. They don't want to cover that up.
I'm really
sure.
looking forward to seeing him next week, sporting that fashion.
Yeah,
because if we learned anything from the Book of Boba Fett, I mean, not to jump too far ahead, but one of the last things said in this episode was, I have to go see a little friend. And that's exactly what's going to be happening next episode. Any sort of visual clues or hints we get, or even just flat out dialogue saying, hey, this is going to happen, we have to just take it on surface value in the Jon Favreau Star Wars universe because it pays off being exactly what we assume it's going to be. I think we try to complicate our speculation. I think we do. I think we overcomplicate our speculation sometimes.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
That's a little fun. That's a little fun.
That's why we don't tell anyone. That's why we do these after shows.
I know.
Yeah.
I know, but sometimes you get so wound up in thinking about
Right.
what could happen, and then when it doesn't happen, you're just like, oh well, maybe next time.
Now,
But
Eric,
I think we're doing pretty good with this. I think that the way things are getting set up are being paid off with. The setups are obvious,
yeah.
but the payoffs make it all worthwhile.
Let's talk a little bit about Tatooine before we go to the phones. By the way, the number is 708-866-1737. We've got a bunch of great chats coming in. This is a great episode to do exactly as Jimmy was telling us that we often do too much of, which is sort of complicate things and speculate. But there is, there are clues that, you might be able to draw some conclusions. Eric on the chat here, it just went up so fast, I wasn't able to pull it, but was saying, will we see Luke Skywalker join in the fight and fight alongside Boba Fett and trying to reclaim? Because, Jim, some dialogue that they give Pelly, who, by the way, has really grown on me. I know I wasn't wild about her at first, but we've seen enough of her. Mm-hmm. And she has a real charm about her, unlike some of the weirdos that we saw, the mullet guy in the mayor's office and the mayor's major domo, where they're more, glib and obnoxious. Pelly's just got like a heart of gold, And my wife said she kind of looks like if Reba McEntire and Rhea Perlman had a love child, it'd be Pelly Moto. Like, yeah, kind of kind of works that way. But something she says, she talks about the Pikes, and she talks about how the Pikes are not great for Tatooine. So there is a planetary need, not just a Boba Fett need, but maybe a planetary need to rid Tatooine of the Pikes, which could bring somebody like a Luke Skywalker in to sort of defend his homeworld.
Well, maybe from a certain point of view.
Right.
But I really think... here's what I think is going to happen. And this is really off the wall. And I don't think people are going to like hearing me say this, but I think when Mando goes to visit Baby Yoda, Luke is going to be revealing that he's having a hard time training Baby Yoda. Grogu can't be trained because he's formed such a strong attachment to the Mandalorian. I think Luke is going to give Grogu back to the Mandalorian. So the dynamic duo will
like
be together for season 3. Well,
and they give him back.
Listen, this is something we've known for a long time about Jedi since the prequel trilogy. And we had some foreshadowing in this episode when the armorer said that is essential to a Jedi being trained is lack of attachment. And so you think, oh, well, she's just warning Din Djarin that if he goes to visit Baby Yoda, that it might not happen, or it might be very restricted or something like that. But I think what's going to happen is that he's going to visit Luke, and Luke's just going to be exhausted. Saying, this kid, he keeps taking the knobs off of things. He's just, what did you do to him? What did you do to him before? And also, Baby Yoda's 50 years old.
Right.
So that's a lot of history right there. And Luke might be in over his head as a very fresh Jedi master who really hasn't trained anyone before outside of working with Leia a little bit. That's my guess. And also because you hate to think of Grogu, sweet Baby Yoda, being present at the Jedi Temple when mean old Kylo Ren has his execution romp through that place. So I don't like to think of that
now,
and committing Grogu to the Jedi cause, even though he is very strong with the Force, committing him to that cause, I think, is, while it seems noble and the right thing to do, it's not the best thing to do for the Mandalorian show. It's best to have him sidekicking with Mandalorian and just getting in wacky adventures together. So that's what I think is going to happen. Okay. And it might happen next episode of Book of Boba Fett, or it might get kind of set up to happen in season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But but I get the feeling it's going to happen.
Some
that
big
feeling.
surprises as we look to season 3. Some surprises for me. One, they're not developing the Bo-Katan character to be, the rightful ruler of Mandalore. It turns out that she likely was a big failure, and her leadership was, according to the armorer, illegitimate. She tried to rule by blood and sword because of her birthright, as opposed to actually being the rightful bearer of the Darksaber. So that's interesting, because I had sort of assumed that Mando would go and go along with and sort of join that sect of Mandalorians, the Bo-Katan, so he could take the helmet off and get Emmy Award nominations.
Yeah.
So that's surprising, but it sounds like maybe what they're doing is setting up him to go back and reclaim his purity, which, so he can join the Coven, which would put him in a position where he's not taking his helmet off anymore, which is kind of interesting. Yep. If you're talking about what's good for the show, what's good,
Yeah. Well, he's already crossed the line. He's taken his helmet off, and he's being rejected by his own people, even if there's only 2 of them left. So the line has been crossed, and I predict we'll see a season 3 of The Mandalorian featuring a helmetless Din Djarin more often than we've ever seen. He's going to become comfortable with that because he's done everything he can do. And it was under extreme situations when he took the helmet off, well, except for the Baby Yoda part. That was, he let Baby Yoda see his face, and he shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
He really shouldn't have. It was a life or death situation there when he was in that Imperial outpost, and he needed to access the computer. He needed his face to be scanned. It's end of story.
Right. Well, he had to blow the whole
life
mission.
or death situation.
Yeah,
but revealing it to Baby Yoda was a decision made on his own. It was a conscious decision. It was a decision knowing that he's breaking the Imperial code, and it wasn't a life or death situation. It was
and it wasn't just Baby Yoda in that room. Everybody saw his face.
Yeah, everyone's looking at him.
Yeah.
He's lucky Baby Yoda is there, and like Baby Yoda's kind of a freak in the Star Wars universe. People don't really know what it is or what he is and stuff, so it takes the attention away from the Mandalorian as he removes his mask. But
well, you could take your helmet off.
To peek under that helmet.
You could take your helmet off, to the dog. It's like, come on. You married people, you know what I'm talking about. You do all kinds of things with the animals around because they can't talk. They can't tell anybody what happened. So, Baby Yoda, seeing his face, if it was just the 2 of them, he could have maybe gotten away with it. But no,
maybe.
Instead,
can I just say that Mike Aragon, who he's a RFR VIP on Patreon, and I recently have hosted an RFR Q&A that we'll be releasing, I think, next week. But he says in the chat, right after Jimmy says we overcomplicate our speculation, then he launches into Baby Yoda failing Jedi school. Yeah, guilty as charged, I guess. We have a lot of great super chats up here too.
Yeah,
I'm
going to get those. I'm going to get those up here in just a second. Let's see, where are we at? Yeah, super chats. Let's go check in here with Danny. Danny, thank you very much. Hey, is it possible that Din Djarin will be trained by a Jedi just as Kanan trained Sabine? Perhaps Luke or Ahsoka, maybe another Force user. They do talk about how Vizsla, the original Vizsla, who forged the Darksaber, was both Jedi and Mandalorian. And that's where that came from. Tar Vizsla? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Tar Vizsla.
Yeah, that story was explained in an episode of Star Wars Rebels. Yeah. So that's consistent with existing canon.
I haven't seen enough times. Rebels it just doesn't stick with me. I don't mean to disparage it, but for some reason I have a hard time with it. Might have been, I don't know, just didn't stick. Thanks, Danny. Appreciate that. Would he be trained? Would they take Mando in that direction?
Well, they did, it is consistent. You had a Jedi training a Mandalorian in the ways of, using the Darksaber in Rebels. That did happen. It just seemed like Din already has the discipline. He just needed the knowledge. He didn't know what he was doing wrong. This thing gets heavier as I try to swing it. He needs to learn how to discipline himself to not fight against the saber. And I think just having that knowledge is good enough, and that he'll keep working on it until he perfects it. I don't think he needs Jedi tutelage on how to use the Darksaber. I think it'll just come to him because he has the information he needs already. I mean, what's Luke going to say to him? Don't fight it. You know, and I've always felt like lightsabers in general were kind of like that. Not so easy to wield.
Yes.
It takes skill and training, and the lightsaber kind of has a life of its own.
Yeah, well, there is references to George Lucas talking about this, about the lightsaber and some of his original ideas and how it would actually be heavy, like an actual steel sword. So this, I feel like some of this is actually bringing that into fruition. By the way, just want to ask you guys, we got quite a few people. Thank you so much joining us live. If you wouldn't mind, please hit the like button. That would be awesome. If you're not subscribed to the Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel, please do so. And also the podcast, if you want to hear more discussion like this, that would be great. But yeah, please.
George Lucas. Oh yes. Thank you. Please hit the likes. George Lucas did say they were heavy, because he wanted the actors to hold the saber hilts with two hands as if they were heavy broadswords. And, they had a lot of weight to them. So this is kind of a clarification on how lightsabers work, and I really like that. Do I have anything else on that? No. You wanted to dive into some Tatooine talk.
I did, but we've got so many super chats. We got to get to those.
All right, super chat me.
Here's Mike. Mike says, pair character cheerfully blowing a party horn. What? Pair character cheerfully blowing a party horn. Mike, thanks for the chat.
I love
dude.
Mike. Like I said, he's an RFR VIP, but I think he was watching Stargate or something. The wrong Star franchise.
Okay. Well, Mike, if you can clarify, you don't have to send another super chat, but
who's the pair character? Maybe that's a typo.
It might be. Sorry, it's just not. It's not clicking. Frank says, if Grogu doesn't sit in the droid port of that Naboo starfighter at some point, I'll eat my Lobot headgear. And Mando said wizard. Yes, Mando did say wizard. I love that. That was great. That was fantastic.
I said yay, and I clapped.
I said
but
yippee.
Yeah, we definitely know. We know that droid port in the back of the N1 fighter is going to be filled by little Grogu wearing his chain mail and joining the battle.
Well, Peli
Maybe
said
Luke
that she
taught him how to use a lightsaber. What?
Didn't Peli say that she hollowed that out because she knew the way he felt about droids?
Yes.
Or implied that, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, no, she said that. She's like, you're not the type of guy who's going to fly around with an astromech.
Right.
And that's true. I mean, he has developed a real bias against mechanicals and droids. We've seen this before. And it was
really
very
ticked
obvious,
off R5D4 too. I mean, R5D4 just went into a bunch of profanity-laden dialogue, and Peli had to correct him when he said he didn't want to fly
I love
around
that
with an
R5D4 lives with Peli, as do pit droids and a treadwheel and a gonk. But in this episode, you had BD from the Jedi Fallen Order video game.
Oh, that's why I didn't recognize him.
Yeah, BD1 from the Jedi Fallen Order. I don't know if it's the exact same droid. I'd like to think it is, but he is the counterpart, the droid counterpart to Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order, which is pound for pound the best Star Wars video game as far as gameplay, characters, and story goes. And I recommend it to all Star Wars fans. Jedi Fallen Order. There's been a lot of good deals online. Amazon Prime was offering it up for comped to subscribers, totally free. And so jump on that and you'll learn a little bit more about BD1.
Eric from Phoenix says,
cool to see him there.
Prequels, Clone Wars, The Mandalorian, Jedi Fallen Order, Book of Fett, original trilogy. Oh my, yes. For sure. It was all in there. This was like Star Wars soup, man. Stew, you might say. Not even soup, stew, because everything maintained its flavor, which I like. That was very cool. So thank you also for
Everything
the super
was
chat.
there. Yeah.
Matt
everything he
Tatooine says,
notably
green-
absent, the sequel trilogy, I might say, notably absent.
Well,
Anything
that would be
said
hard
about
because
the
it hadn't
sequel
happened
trilogy.
yet.
Oh, I know, but I think in Mandalorian both seasons, there were little kind of nods to Palpatine's cloning project. Maybe
There were. I hope they don't dump that. I don't want them to dump that in search for
No, I don't either.
Mando taking some baths in the underground sewers of Mandalore, because I think that's very important stuff. Dustin says Mando had to try spinning. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, he did.
yeah.
It was cool.
Had to do it. We caught that. Yeah, where he's flying around Tatooine. It's great to see him fly into Beggar's Canyon, take some of the same route that the pod racers took in episode 1, even going by those dwellings that were actually built into the canyon walls and that ramp that Anakin shot up on, all present there at that point. And I've played the Star Wars pod race video game so many times. I know that terrain like the back of my hand. I could almost fly through it myself and not get lost if it was a real place. And it was really great to see all of that. I mean, it was just such a thrill. Right outside Mos Eisley, where it should be.
Yeah.
Just wonderful.
Matt Tween says, Green Rhodian, check. BD Droid, check. Womp Rat and Baker's Canyon, check. And we finally find out what a cryogenic density combustion booster is.
Yeah.
We were just dying to know what that was.
Well, it was a trash compactor junk that the Jawas presented to Din. The same piece of trash compactor junk from the Death Star that Han Solo held to try to brace the walls. That's what it was. That's what it was. Yeah. Cryogenic density combustion booster. And the Jawas, they just saw it right off of it.
Is that the thing that Leia says, get on top of it?
No, I think she's talking about a mound of junk or something.
Oh, okay.
And it was Luke who said that to Leia, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Devotion to accuracy here.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny that the Jawas just saw it off of a parked ship. It's kind of like how organized crime and gangs are going after catalytic converters these days. And they're taking the catalytic converters for the precious metals and they're selling it overseas in Asian markets, which they make a lot of money doing that. So that's what's been happening. So if you hop into your car and you hear, that means Jawas got to you and they took your cryogenic density combustion booster.
Unsourced Wall Radio says Star Wars has always been crossed with fantasy, so I love how Mando figured out he's basically King Arthur and is still out there hustling. Yeah, that is, that's a very cool idea with Mando. How, that was something that was also on my list of surprises. Mando, just going back to doing his thing, doing his bounty hunter thing. Yeah. Hey, let's jump over to the phones.
Brutality.
My God. Well,
have we ever seen such brutality from Din Djarin before?
Well, we certainly haven't seen it from Boba Fett.
And then what?
I said we certainly haven't seen it from Boba Fett. This guy's
we haven't.
A Boy Scout running around giving people all the slack in the world.
In half?
Yeah,
decapitating them.
Yeah,
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, no, it was great.
It's absolute mayhem.
It was great. It was wild, and it really. I will say this. Outside of that opening scene, and this was what I mentioned is my hot take. So agree to disagree if you want. I think if we were sitting here and that was the first episode of Mando Season 3, people would be calling us up right now saying that it was filler. But as an episode of Book of Boba Fett, it's epic.
I say no. How could this be filler? Because it connected the dots with so many mysteries that have been placed.
Connected those dots through a lot of dialogue and exposition.
And visual flashbacks like the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Not much flashback. There was one sequence. Yeah, there were two. There were two shots. There were the bombs going off and the building blowing up, and then the K2 droids going through and looking for survivors. Yeah, but it's still, at the end of the day, it was killer opening, killer closing with the starfighter, and a lot of exposition. And I'm just thinking back to our Mandalorian after shows and some of these episodes that, there was a lot of good information, but I shouldn't say many considered it filler. I just think that here's my problem. This episode shines so brightly because it's an episode of The Mandalorian shoved in the Book of Boba Fett, which is lackluster. Let's go to the phones.
Well, wait a second now. Let's go to the phone. I just wanted to say that it is very obvious the differences in the two shows when you have something like this happen. When a total detour is taken away from the show that you've been watching. This is definitely an episode of The Mandalorian, not the Book of Boba Fett. It's fact. You can't watch season 3 of The Mandalorian without watching this. It's essential viewing. And I've heard people say, well, what if people aren't they love The Mandalorian, but they don't watch the Book of Boba Fett? Well, I think that's there's plenty of people out there who might be passing on Book of Boba Fett, but they're not Star Wars super fans like we are. So it's all one big ball of wax for us. And what I thought was really impressive was the way you bring the Mandalorian into the Book of Boba Fett, and it just expands on the Favreau-verse. And I like that. I like seeing it all kind of come together because Marvel has done it so well. And I really don't consider Marvel very much when I'm watching Star Wars.
Wait a minute. How do you figure that you have a brand new character, essentially, in The Mandalorian? He doesn't exist in any of the lore. And you have that juxtaposed next to the most iconic bounty hunter in all of Star Wars, and probably it would certainly make a top 10 most iconic characters in Star Wars, period. People would look at that and they would know who that is, or they would recognize him as Star Wars.
10.
He's definitely top 10. So how do you reconcile the fact that that character that is so well known and so beloved is so quickly and easily upstaged by this upstart?
Because they took all of the cool elements of that character and gave it to the upstart to begin with.
Well, okay, that's a whole other conversation. That's a whole other conversation.
It's not a whole other conversation. It's answering your question because they gave all of the great elements of Boba Fett to the Mandalorian, to Din Djarin. Now what are you left with Boba Fett? You have to reinvent the character. And
that was probably not wise. It probably wasn't wise.
Well, that's why I was so surprised when I originally learned that, and I heard this from a guy who can't even come close to saying his connection with the production. Let's just say he is connected with the production. He's connected with both The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. And he told me that the Boba Fett show was greenlit and that he was working on it. And I was like, wow, a Boba Fett show on top of The Mandalorian. That seems kind of like thin ice to be skating on. Because, as I said, you've taken all of the coolest elements of Boba Fett and you've given it to The Mandalorian. So really, to see The Mandalorian be so effective is a tribute to Boba Fett and what a great character he is or was.
Oh, boy, that is some stretch. Are you sore from all that stretching that you did with?
No, I'm dizzy from all the spin.
All right. First time caller.
It's like if you put sand in the sandbox, I'm going to start building a sandcastle with it, okay?
Of course. First time caller.
The most logical looking construction, but that's what I'm going to do.
Patreon. First time caller and Patreon member Mike from Massachusetts. Is that it? Hey, Mike.
That's correct. Hey, guys. First time, long time. Love the show.
Thanks, bud.
And I would like to say also, like Pelimoto, I too once dated a Jawa.
Oh, Wow, was that?
Can we talk?
Can we talk?
Can we talk? What about the information revealed that they're hairy little buggers? Now, I was wondering, does she mean like hairy all over or just in certain places?
She said very.
Anyone?
Oh boy.
Very hairy.
Very. She said like 3 times.
I didn't get that
I
far,
dated
so I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Well,
I
it does.
dated
It
one
does answer some questions. We don't know, in canon, what is under those robes, those cloaks, but apparently a lot of hair. So
Well, according to
Can
legend, and Mike from Mass can probably verify this, but the Jawas were always said to be descendants of the Sand People, that they came from the same place. They just evolved from the Sand People over time, and they keep themselves wrapped up. You could only see their glowing eyes through their wrappings, and the wrappings are similar to that of a Tusken. But their eyes are visible there, and they wear those cloaks. But when you unwrap those black bandages from a Jawa, it's a rodent-like character.
Oh.
A rodent.
Yeah.
So, and they smell bad too. That's the other thing about Jawas.
Inside
I've
and
always
out.
understood.
But this is about Mike. This is about what Mike thinks. Mike, what's on your mind?
Well, they are filthy little creatures, so they
Yeah.
do have a bit of an odor. I will definitely say that. What I wanted to talk about today was just real quick. I noticed that Dave Filoni was not the second X-wing pilot in this episode.
Yeah, no Wolf.
So I was thinking, what's that?
Yeah, no Wolf. That was Wolf was his name.
Yes.
I was relieved
okay.
not to see
So I
him.
was like, yes, me too. But I was thinking, like, this guy has to be someone. Why would they just stick this rando inside the X-wing cockpit? And I looked it up, and it is, in fact, Max Lloyd Jones, who played the Luke Skywalker body double in the last.
That's right.
Mando season 2.
Wow. Okay, he had a sort of something familiar about that guy, and that's why. That's why. Interesting. I didn't realize.
I thought that was cool.
That's cool.
I thought that was cool. They gave him some face time in the show, which I think he deserves. He did a great job as Luke.
He
as
sure
we all
did.
know.
Yeah, he sure did.
And then I was wondering if I could just put my 17-year-old daughter on the phone real quick, because she has a theory about Mando that she would like to talk to you guys about.
Love to hear
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
What's her name?
Hi, Ella from Massachusetts. Also, that's
Hi,
kind of
Ella.
Ella?
You guys already kind of shot down my theory, a little disappointing. But when the armor were brought up that the Darksaber was originally made by a Mandalorian who's also a Jedi,
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. And I was
That very
thinking
interesting.
that since Mando doesn't know how to use it really, I was thinking that he might not necessarily be trained by Luke, because I don't think that would work well, but he might need Grogu's help because of his whole thing about like family and solidarity being important to the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And then that might give them a reason to tie Grogu and Mando together, because I don't think separating them.
I think you're half right and Jimmy's all wrong on the Luke Skywalker thing. I think we actually will see. Luke give Mando some pointers on swinging that sword around. I do. It's hard for me to imagine, as capable as Baby Yoda is. It's hard for me to imagine him giving lightsaber training. Based on his development.
I definitely can't see him.
Yeah, would be hard. But I think
doubt Grogu's going to be cutting anyone in half.
Well, maybe not with a sword, maybe with his mind, and those little claws of his. But yeah. But I do think that we're going to see Luke showing Mando how to do that. I think that would be a lost opportunity if we didn't. But we'll see. Thanks, Ella. That's a great thought. And thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thanks for being a Patreon. Thanks for calling us up tonight. We've got another first-time caller and a Patreon. We've got Tanner from Denver. Hey, Tanner, what's up?
Hey, tut, skug holes.
Oh, wait a minute. That reminded me. I said this off camera and off mic before we started the show, and I was hoping that maybe Jimmy would have written down some of the new Star Wars profanity we were introduced to this week, because there was some
We
new.
got Bantha Diddle. Bantha Diddle, ladies and gentlemen. I have it written right here. Bantha Diddle.
Aha.
So you can throw that around. At
What's the curse? What's the curse that Mando did he said it a couple of times when he was flying.
Dank Ferric.
Oh, Dank Ferric.
Dank Ferric, which is that kind of like GD it? Dank Ferret? I don't think so. I
think so. Or son of a, I think it's something.
Son of a scug hole. Anyway, what did you want to talk about, Tanner?
Yeah, Bantha Diddle.
Yeah, so one real quick thing, and then I'll get to what I actually wanted to talk about, but just throwing it out there until it's not confirmed. The twins are Zero the Hutt's kids. They were his cousins, and Zero is his uncle. Anyways, what I really wanted to think about...
Is that a theory, or is that canon somewhere?
That's canon for me until it's proven different.
All right. I hear you. I like to think that Zero... I mean, if you can imagine those two being Zero's kids. I mean, they're both very eccentric. Yeah, I could see that. I like that idea. So, but they look more like Zero than
a litter. Nobody ever carries me on a litter no more.
They look more like Zero than they do Snooty. But then again, Hutts are what is that? They can breed without what do you call? Is that asexual? No. What is that term where they can, like worms? They can
worm.
Anyway, we'll figure that out. Sorry, Tanner, we keep throwing you off track. What did you really want to talk about?
Yeah, so I just wanted to bounce off of kind of what you've already said with how this episode has some stuff thrown out to lead up to Luke returning.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take it to the next level. And so you already mentioned Pelly talking about the state of Tatooine. And then also Mando now Din Djarin has no clan now because he was renounced by the Armorer.
He's an orphan again.
He wants to show Boba Fett that he has good faith on him. So when he teams up for Boba Fett, he denied the payment. And I think what's better than to show good faith than showing up by yourself, but show up with backup. He's going to try to pull Luke. Luke is preoccupied with something else, maybe training the new Jedi Order. And Luke will say, hey, I'll send my buddy Han and Chewie. And
what a surprise that's going to be. I love that theory. That's cool. And there are, there are rumors and, maybe even something stronger than rumors about a Han Solo appearance in this show. But what a moment, right? Where the landing gear comes down, the ramp goes down, and Boba's seeing his cavalry arrive, and here comes Chewbacca and Han Solo.
Harry and the
It
boy.
would be incredible to see those two next to Boba and Chrysanthemum.
And he's going to be like, no hard feelings, mate. We've seen him do that a couple times, bury the hatchet. But that's cool, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Tanner.
Great.
Yeah, very, very good. All right, let's see.
And by the way, Tanner, can I just say, Tanner is my favorite of the Bad News Bears. He played shortstop for them, and he was a foul-mouthed little bantha diddle.
In the original?
Yeah, the original.
Okay.
That's the only one to watch.
Well, they did a couple of sequels, didn't they?
Yeah, the sequels pass and the remake pass. But watch the original.
And there was a
Walter
TV
Matthau.
series.
Awful. I watched it when it happened. It was
oh, you were there. It was kind of like when Mandalorian showed up on TV. Jimmy was little 8-year-old Jimmy's finally getting his Bad News Bears TV show because he loved the movie so much. And it was a big letdown. No Walter Matthau.
Yeah, I was the biggest 8-year-old Jackie Earl Haley fan on the planet. And I was very disappointed with the Bad News Bears TV series. And that was during a time when a lot of movies were being made into network television spinoffs, and they all sucked.
Planet of the Apes is a good example.
MASH was the only one that worked. Planet of the Apes is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But MASH was the only one that really worked. Everyone wanted to find the MASH, and they just couldn't.
Here's Adam. He says a Jedi weapon is a weapon of defense, which is why the Darksaber can be made of Baskar. A Jedi weapon is a weapon of defense. Wow.
Is the Darksaber made of it is.
The hilt
the hilt
is.
This is a type of Baskar I've never seen before. Right. So it might have been forged with other material that the Jedi used to create their own lightsabers. But I believe the blade on the Darksaber itself primarily functions like a lightsaber. It's made of energy. and it's like a lightsaber, not like a Baskar weapon, which we know that the Mandalorians don't like, because a Baskar weapon means it can pierce Baskar armor.
Right.
And Constantine he gave us a super chat. He says, isn't the whistling birds that Mando has a Baskar weapon? And they were forged from Baskar, those whistling birds. So that's a contradiction in the armorer's philosophy, because she herself is manufacturing ammunition made of Baskar.
Yes, and we see him empty the whistling birds when he's checking all of his weapons, which, you know, I don't know, like another week, another moment, I might not have liked that scene, but this week I loved that scene. I mean, it might have been a little too real worldy for some people, but it made me laugh out loud a couple of times. Just the clunk of all those weapons coming out was great. But I thought it was leading to something where, you know, something would be missing. But nothing was when he got it.
What if they let him keep all of his weapons, but made him throw away his bottle of wine that he was carrying on his carry-on bag, you know?
I know, that's a deep cut for you. You still remember not being able to take that Skywalker wine onto the airplane when we were leaving San Francisco that time.
Me and Swank. It's my fault. I drove the wrong way on the 101 leaving Sand Sweet's place. I was supposed to be going south. I went north for some crazy reason. And Jason's like, yeah, the GPS is saying we're going the wrong way. That's impossible. I know where we are. So we cut it so close for our flight out of SFO that we had to cut our way through the security line. And you know, God bless those guys at the SFO airport. They let us do it. Otherwise, we would have missed our flight. But I had a bottle of a $70 bottle of Skywalker Ranch Pinot Noir.
Heartbreaker.
And I stood there in front of the garbage can, in front of the security guy, dropped it right in. And I know, and then I ran through the security line, up the escalator and stuff. And I really, if I wasn't so pressed for time, I would have turned around to see that security guy reach into that garbage can and pull out that bottle of wine.
If you just had a little more time, you could have just popped it open and just took a big swig out of the bottle and then dropped it.
You know. Yeah, I didn't have my corkscrew with me.
Yeah, that's tough.
Which I'm also not allowed to carry on the plane. They would have made me throw that away too. But Mando flies coach, which really surprised me.
He does. But it all makes sense. Of course, you would have to have, in a galaxy far, far away, you would have to have some sort of commercial flying. But it was funny because, here's this guy who was this jet setter and going back and forth across the galaxy, chasing these bounties, and now he's reduced to just flying commercial. It was actually a really, really funny idea. And obviously they're not going to milk it. It's not lasting too long because he's got a new ride, which is very cool. Back to the phones here. John from Tennessee. Hey, John, you're on with Rebel Force Radio.
Hey, Mr. Swank.
How are you?
Hey, Johnny.
I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Hey,
John.
how you doing, Jason?
Doing great, buddy. So what do you got?
So I, as a prequel apologist, loved this episode, especially that starfighter. And when he did the somersault, did the turn, my heart just leapt for joy. This episode brought me to tears with that starfighter. I loved every bit of it, and I was waiting for there to be some indication that it was the starfighter that Anakin flew. That would have been like icing on the cake for me.
We know that's a good question, John. I'm going to pull it up, Jim, while you explain.
Sure. Paul Bateman has studied this scene because he studies Star Wars like no one else. And Paul believes it is not the same starfighter. But he gave us some pictures that said, the control panel looks different and the symbols on the side of the cockpit that can be seen on the main hull there, those all are different. But I think there might be a little wiggle room for that, because the reason the control panel looks so different is because Jason just
So
put it
this
up
is
on
the
screen.
Mando control panel right here.
That's the
custom it
Mando
out.
control panel.
Now we're going to flip over. Here's Anakin's. Now they look similar.
The difference is they look very similar. The only differences is that they're little tiles or little like plates next to the lights and above that ignition button. Those are all missing. Okay. But you can see there's spots for them. And they look like they're just simply screwed on. So over time, I mean, look at this ship. It looks like it's been really picked apart. So I don't notice the differences so much. Now, here's another shot in talking about what I was referencing to earlier. As you can see at the bottom there are these Naboo symbols on the outside, the yellow part of the ship there, right underneath the cockpit window. According to Paul, those are different symbols than what's seen on Anakin's Naboo starfighter, which are right here. But if you can see it's another side of the ship. So I think there's wiggle room here.
By the way, the
This
other
is
thing,
the
the
right
thing
side of the
that
ship.
boggles
This is
my
the left
mind
side of the ship.
about Paul Bateman is that he remembers that there were glyphs at all on this thing. Who remembers that there are glyphs on the side of the ship other than Paul Bateman? It's unbelievable.
We definitely got glyphs, but this is the right side of the ship, and the picture of Anakin supplied to us is on the left side of the ship. So the glyphs could be different on either side. So I think there's a little bit of wiggle room. And this could quite possibly be Anakin's N1 starfighter. And I'm saying that knowing that I will be just completely victim of an avalanche of emails from London coming at me right after the show. How dare you say? But I mean, I think there's wiggle room there.
Yeah,
I mean, yes, there are differences, but the ship is also ravaged by the time we see it in the Book of Boba
True.
Fett. So
And one other point here that some of the folks in the chat have raised, that it's also, it's sort of a Franken ship. It's a combination of a lot of ships. They've been piecing parts together. But the idea is that, the central hull was there and it is of one ship. Kevin Lyle just sent me a text. He said the writing on the side is presumably the pilot's name. So that is what it is. It likely is. So it could have switched hands over the years. We don't know. But
I mean, he flew it as a kid. He flew it as a little kid. It wasn't his ship.
Right. That's true.
Yeah, but it would be the same name on both
accident.
sides, right? It would be the same name. That consistency would be there if that's what those glyphs stand for. So it would be the same on both sides. So that part of the argument might be like, pulling the rug out underneath my saying there's wiggle room.
Well, but John, you bring up a good point. I mean, as far as the tip of the hat to the prequels, we haven't seen Disney embrace the prequel trilogy to this degree. I don't know really ever. I mean, Disney, when they first came in, they sort of wanted to blow the whole thing up.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of apropos that, Howard is the director on this, because this had nods to American Graffiti with the way they made the modifications to the Starfighter to be like those old, Chevrolet hot rods. There's just a lot of the Lucas legacy fingerprints all throughout this episode, I felt like. And it just, it brought a tear to my eye. And especially a tear because we're not going to see a Hasbro Black Series Starfighter for Din Djarin, and it's going to piss me off.
We're not going to see it. By the way, hey, John, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Good comments.
Thanks, man.
So the Hasbro, by the way, if you didn't see this, Hasbro they did renew the Star Wars license, or rather Lucasfilm/Disney did renew Hasbro as their licensee. No huge surprise there. Jim, did you happen to see the terms? Are we looking at another decade of poor management of the brand by Hasbro?
Hasbro, it's not just Hasbro. There's a two-way street there. Lucas,
I know. Yeah,
also calls a lot of the shots when it comes to
a
that
lot
kind
of the shots. Stuff. Yeah.
And, they want to maintain the status quo. It's historically, it's the same company that, they absorbed Kenner
Right.
And they've been with Star Wars for a long time. Hasbro has been since 1995. So, yeah, there's a lot that I would like to see changed with the license and everything. And I would like to see them show a little more respect to the traditional Star Wars fan who collects traditional action figures. But, it's going to keep going, which is good. I think it's a good thing.
Not to go on a total rabbit trail, but just something that occurred to me. I love Scott the Toy Guru Nightlick, who's a YouTuber. So check it out. Spectre Creatives, I believe it is, on YouTube. We had him on RFR not long ago. But he makes the case about, and I think it's important to bring up, he makes the case about why like Marvel Legends and the Marvel brand is so successful in the toy aisles is because they have a constant flow of media to tie into. There's always a new movie or a TV show. And I think he's right about that, first of all. But he uses that as a way to describe why Star Wars is not so successful in that department. And I think that argument, not to take down what Scott's saying, but the excuse is no longer valid. Every 3 months now, I think we're going to be getting a new Star Wars TV series with what's coming up in 2022. There's no reason why, by the time we get to Kenobi, that there's not a plethora of Kenobi tie-in merchandise, figures, and toys. And then we're going to have another Bad Batch season. Let's finally get a proper Bad Batch, lineup of figures. So I think that argument is losing steam. There's plenty of media content. Plenty.
So many holes in that argument. I like Scott too, but some of his apologies and excuses he makes for why the toy industry makes so many mistakes is it's hard to swallow a lot of times.
Spoken like a guy that's worked in the industry, right? With Scott. I mean, he knows, but yeah.
They're blind to what people want. They really are. And they get all bogged down in the bureaucracy and the red tape.
Yeah. It happens.
That doesn't hold any steam about, the content, because the Bad Batch came and went with no action figure line. Rise of Skywalker came and went with no action figure line. So the content is there and there's no reaction from Hasbro.
Right. But you bring up a good point.
You say saying why?
Yeah, but you bring up a good point when you say, look, it takes two to tango. It's not just a Hasbro. It's also Lucasfilm, because and this goes way back. I mean, George held back on a lot of the character designs back in the early, those initial days of the Kenner line, because he was worried about people poaching the designs and things like that. So there's a history of them holding back on this material because they don't want it to get out there in the general public before. But you know what? I mean, I feel like that these characters and these designs are so well established by now. Who's going to steal a Jawa? Like, what's the scare of putting some of these characters out there that are the designs and the likenesses are so well known at this point? There's no risk.
Yeah. They only want to put out Lando Calrissian action figures that nobody's buying.
No offense.
This is true.
Yeah,
this is true.
Right.
And I mean, and I'm saying that as somebody who loves the character, but I mean, it's just this persistence to put out these action figures en masse that nobody is buying. It's poor marketing strategy. And Lucasfilm doesn't know what the hell they're doing when it comes to this stuff. And it's been proven to me by the new book by Blue Milk LLC, Rich Alott, Dave Myatt. I received my copy.
Daryl DePriest.
And there's so many great ideas from Hasbro that Lucasfilm shoots down, and Hasbro only makes cool stuff if they really are persistent with Lucasfilm, because Lucasfilm will shoot things down.
Yeah.
They don't really know what the fans and collectors want. They really don't. And they base their decisions on, numbers alone or whatever. It's crazy. It's great. Just poor instinct is what I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too. I think it's a lot of navel gazing and being a little too precious with things. Here's Dominic Super Chat. He says, my theory is that the Armorer is a previous follower of Darth Maul during the end of the Clone Wars, and that is why she is not a fan of Bo-Katan. Remember that Din Djarin was saved by the Death Watch. Okay. I'll let Jim take this one, because I think this is just like apologizing for, it's like, oh, Bo-Katan must be the end-all be-all. She must be a phenomenal leader. It can't possibly be that she was, an illegitimate ruler. Maybe she was. Maybe she stunk.
The thing about the armor is she does have those little horns on top of her helmet that represent Mandalorians.
Does she?
Why does she have that? Yeah, she's got little spikes. Pull up a screen grab of her and you'll see it. I'm not going crazy, am I? I mean, now you have me doubting myself.
Hold on, I'm gonna go grab my action figure.
Oh, wow. See, I didn't bring the props this week, and I should have. Fool. But sometimes it's hard for me even. Yeah, she's got the little horns up there. She got a couple of them. And that could be some visual representation of her past allegiances.
All right. You might be onto something. It's not quite as overt, but yeah, there's some horniness going on there.
There's 4 of them. There's 4.
Yeah, her helmet is a little horny.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
all right. You might be right. Imagine that. They're going to find some way to bring Darth Maul into this damn thing. She's going to be, the whole time we're going to find out that she's been a Mandalorian.
Yeah. It's possible. Why not?
Yeah, we're going to say Darth Maul's still alive. Yeah, Obi-Wan didn't kill him. No, he's still alive.
Yeah, but she said, yeah. You know what? I'm thinking about this timeline and everything. Remember, she said that they were hiding out on the moon of Concordia.
Right.
And the Death Watch were hiding out on Concord Dawn, right?
Yes.
Or was the Death Watch on Concordia too? Oh,
I thought it was Concord Dawn. I
thought
it was. I don't know. Or you're just so convincing in the way you deliver this stuff.
Before the show.
I believe anything you say.
I know. You got to listen closely. I'll believe anything you said. Like last week, you said something about Darth Vader and Darth Maul having a showdown in Rebels. Did you say that? You said something like that. I don't know. Somebody told me you said something like that.
I might have said something like that. Wait, there was a Darth Vader v. Maul in a comic or something, wasn't it?
In a comic in Star Wars Tales.
Oh, in Tales. We know that's not real. All right.
That was like, yes.
My bad.
That was like the Star Wars Infinities brand.
Right, of course.
Anything could happen. It was all taken. Yes. Concordia was the planet, the moon.
Yeah, the moon.
That Death Watch was hanging out on. Death Watch.
Yeah.
During the Clone Wars. Now, the Children of the Watch, which is the sect that's represented by the armor, etc., they were hiding out on Concordia when the Night of 1,000 Tears happened, but this was decades after the Clone Wars.
Yeah, of course.
So Concordia is the place where like all the freaks of Mandalorian go, all the traditionalists, all the the misstep that the Mandalorians made during the time of Satine Kryze, during the time of her rule, they abandoned everything that's important to the armor and Din Djarin and the Children of the Watch. They abandoned all of that stuff, the warrior ways. But that stuff is like part of their blood, and it was impossible for them to evolve beyond that without total catastrophe.
You just reminded me when you said warrior ways. Is Favreau finally credited as being the voice of Paz Vizsla on this show?
I didn't look.
Clearly him.
But yeah, he was doing it.
But I don't think that it's ever been, it's one of those uncredited roles, I think, probably because of like union rules or something. I don't know.
Money.
Money.
But
I love this from Devin. He says, quote, people keep complaining about this Boba Fett show. We got any Mandalorian episodes we can run this week? That is kind of what it felt like, Devin. That's good.
This is not a reaction.
No, it is not. No,
to
it's
anything.
No.
This was shot as part of this season of Book of Boba Fett. They're not shifting things from season 3 into Book of Boba Fett because some of the fan base reacted poorly to the show. That's not what's happening here.
No.
As a matter of fact, there was a conversation between Ewan McGregor and Pedro Pascal over the summer. You can see it on YouTube. I think they did it for Variety. And Pedro changes the subject when Mandalorian season 3 comes up. And it almost seems like Ewan McGregor was taking the conversation to a place it shouldn't be going.
Yes.
And so Pedro shifted gears and started talking about something else. Because I think he was afraid that Ewan McGregor was going to reveal, hey, I saw you on the set of the
I was there. Pedro, remember I came up and I said hello and you were on the set? And he's like, I don't know.
Coffee.
But don't
the
forget
thing
too,
is like
Giancarlo Esposito also had a little slip of the tongue and talked about how he had just wrapped up Book of Boba Fett and then was going into Mandalorian season 3. If you remember, there was that moment of him. So yeah, he was laughing. He's like, yeah, we just finished up Book of Boba Fett. Now we're going into Mandalorian season 3 and we don't need Pedro. And
just the fact he was referenced in this episode.
Yeah, he's
such a way where we knew exactly where he was and what was going on. It almost seems like there's going to be more Mandalorian season 2.5 happening in these final 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett. I really believe that. And I think Jon Favreau is on the hook to direct 1 episode. I thought he directed this episode when the Mandalorian, what's his name? Paz Vizsla showed up.
Paz Vizsla.
John was voicing the character. I was like, oh, maybe this is the episode Fabs is directing, but it was Bryce's, and she did a fabulous job.
She sure did.
And she did, because you know what? There was so much going on in this episode. It was just, it was almost like so much content.
A lot of dialogue.
episodes.
It was a lot of dialogue, you know, and believe me, I love storytelling. So, I mean, I'm not complaining. I love exposition. I love getting background, you know, canonical background of some of this stuff. So I loved it. And that's an art, you know, being able to direct that, being able to keep, you know, some momentum in the show, in the episode, and still have it, you know, very dialogue heavy. But, you know, you had these 2 great sequences that bookended it, you know, the meat market or the, you know, the, whatever it was, the butcher shop at the beginning and then the, you know, the taking the starfighter to flight it was so good. So well done. Let's go. First time caller and a Patreon. We've got Aaron from Minnesota. Aaron, you're on with Rebel Force Radio.
Chut, guys.
Chut, buddy.
Hi, Aaron.
Hey, so I kind of wanted to chat about why Mando went back to the covert to begin with, kind of knowing that he did break their rules and knowing he might be punished for it. I thought it was kind of a weird move on his part.
Oh, yeah, it is a covert, not a coven. I don't know why I want to keep calling it a coven.
Yeah, that's like witches gathering.
Covert, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, coven.
Covert.
Yeah.
They're just hiding.
Right,
yeah, whatever.
they're
That's
covert,
technical.
yeah.
Who cares?
Right.
Who
So
cares?
what was his motivation? Why did he end up going there? Okay, so I think what we're supposed to assume is that the head of that Klatooinian, he was doing not so much for money, but for information, and that information was about where perhaps the armorer had fled to. So maybe there were whispers of someone kind of like Mandalorian, you know, in this area. And why would he go there? I don't know that he needs like any great reason other than the fact that that was that's where he grew up. That's home. She
family.
represents home.
Yeah.
It is family to him. So I don't know. I'd ask you, Aaron, why does that seem odd to you, or does it seem odd to you?
Yeah, it did feel weird to me just because of the fact that, you know, he broke the rule, taking his helmet off, and they're so strict about, you know, keeping to the creed. So going and knowing he'd probably be punished for it, you know, being expelled from their covert. So if he was going to look for Grogu anyway, or to go say hi to him again, I felt like it maybe should have been, saying, hey, I just need to, stop in, get supplies, and then leave, not, try to stick around and, almost lie to your parents about, messing up and getting in trouble.
I also think, well, okay, I get that, but I also think he had a lot of questions about that Darksaber.
Yes.
He was trying to figure out why in the world was this so important, and what role was he going to play in this. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
I believe so too.
Just my theory. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate the call. Matt with a super chat says, Mando shows up to get Grogu. Master Luke. Wait a minute. Mando shows up to get Grogu. Master Luke approaches him and lets him know he's in meditation with Master Mace, still healing from Palpatine. A good reason why he's been gone the whole time, while helping Luke with training. Boy, we don't want to give up on that crazy old Mace showing up. I don't hate the idea. I really don't. I don't hate the idea of one of those. He'd be pretty old, though, wouldn't he?
Well, but with the way Samuel L. Jackson is aged, it fits the Star Wars timeline just fine. These events are happening 5 years after Return of the Jedi. I mean, it all works out in my book. You just give him a robot hand and put him on his way.
I suppose. I mean, Anakin's still kicking around from the Clone Wars days, but he was pretty young. And look, time, we know time and age. I mean, look, how old is Chewie? How old is Yoda? It's kind of irrelevant in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm all for it. I would never say no to a Mace Windu reappearing in Star Wars, modern Star Wars. That would be fine with me.
Yeah, well, I think it would work. They better do it now.
Yeah, hurry up.
Nobody's getting younger.
Danny says, was that the same BD1 from Fallen Order? Paint job is a little different. I don't know, Jim. Was it the same?
I'd like to think it was, but that BD1, that wasn't the only BD droid out there. So I don't think so. I don't think so. It was a different paint job and everything, but time happens and paint chips and but I don't think, because the droid wasn't referred to specifically as BD1. So I think if they wanted to make the connection, they would have very easily.
It was really cute. I like that. My kids love that little droid. It was very dog-like.
Yeah.
A little dog.
Yeah.
Even shook like a little dog, like a little, one of those little, like a little Lhasa Apso or something like that. Here's Ben Stein. Says, not that Ben Stein, this Ben Stein, our Ben Stein. Do you think that maybe the Armorer and Bo-Katan just have diametrically opposed philosophies, and that Bo-Katan will have an equally strong counter argument to the Armorer's allegations about her? Thanks, guys.
Well, they both appear to be failures, the Armorer and Bo-Katan, for that matter. I mean, they're both on the run. They both have lost their homes. They've both lost their influence.
Well, okay, wait. I don't. Okay, let me ask you why you think that the Armorer is a failure. Because my interpretation of those events was that they risked their anonymity and they risked outing themselves to save Din, one of their own.
Yeah. They're survivors. I guess I've been thinking of them as failures because they were so different from the Bo-Katan type of Mandalorian. And the Bo-Katan type of Mandalorian, they seem like they're out there, they're active, they're vibrant, they're
hanging at bars with their helmets off.
Drinking. They're hanging and banging.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Armorer, she's got everyone hiding out in the sewers and they don't reveal themselves. They never take their helmets off. It just seemed like they're getting crushed under their own beliefs, making them ineffectual as mere citizens in the Star Wars universe. They're hiding, they're smelting and hiding and smelting. And, so what does that do for anyone? And still, when we catch up to them, they're hiding again. He has to track them down. There's only two of them. So I think, the schism that happens with the Mandalorians, where they're so non-unified. I think that's what really has been their biggest weakness. And
definitely,
but I find strength. I find strength in the Children of the Watch, knowing that it's through the prophecies that they were able to recognize something was wrong with the way the Mandalorian government was happening under the guise of the Kryze family, and they were abandoning their Mandalorian beliefs. For what reason? To become pacifists and all of that stuff. It was a hard pill for fans to swallow when that happened in Clone Wars season 2. And it really
it was a huge deal. It was like, it was a total nuke and pave of everything we knew in expanded universe about Mandalorians.
Yeah, but meanwhile, you have the Death Watch hiding out. You have the Children of the Watch hiding out. So, I mean, obviously, the Armorer is a direct descendant of the Pre-Vizsla Death Watch. Children of the Watch. It's the next generation of Death Watch.
For sure.
And so they're trying so hard to maintain their fundamental beliefs that they have to fight against their own people to preserve it. And what happens? They witness the massacre and the obliteration of their entire society. And so they say, look, we told you that would happen. And now it's happened. So it only makes them, I think, stronger.
Oh, they dig their heels in deeper. Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's so much failures. I don't think there's so much failures now, but I think all Mandalorians are failures for not being able to unify themselves and rally around their fundamental beliefs, because that's what they're all about to begin with.
Right.
It's too progressive. It's too progressive.
Yeah. And to further your point about the connection between the Death Watch and the Armorer's covert is the fact that there's a Vizsla. There's a descendant of the House of Vizsla that's still there. And I thought that whole idea of him challenging Din was very cool. I mean, that's what you would expect from a member of House Vizsla, a descendant of Pre-Vizsla. You expect that.
Maybe that's Pre's son.
Or
Pre's very well-fed son. He is the biggest Mandalorian, right? He's the big boy.
Yeah.
He's like with the Mandal Merc, when they're all walking along and they look screen accurate, and then,
right.
You might have a couple in there with armor on who are more representative of the Paz Vizsla physique, and I think that's great.
I do too.
I think that's great.
You got to let the costume choose you. Choose you, not you choosing the costume.
Now anyone could be a Mandalorian, though. It doesn't matter. Size, shape, sex.
I'm still a Ugnaught or a Jawa. All right, Jeff from Michigan. I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to show up trying to pass myself. What, I'm going to be Han Solo? I'm sorry, you guys that are trying to pass yourself off as Han Solo. I love you, but come on. Jeff from Michigan. You got a Darksaber theory? Or are you just happy to see me?
Chut, guys.
Chut.
Great show, gentlemen.
Thanks, buddy.
So, one thing I noticed is there's this strong sort of like underlying theme of the Darksaber kind of being like Excalibur, or sort of like who's worthy of wielding it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And watching both of the Mandalorian and Boba Fett's journeys, Boba Fett's a little more older, he's more wise, kind of been through more. They're both the ultimate like badass Mandalorians. Who's better? So I kind of had this theory that maybe they might take like a left turn and the Darksaber may end up in Boba Fett's hands, because not that they'd necessarily like fight each other for it, but it just might end up where Boba Fett has to use it, and it turns out he uses it much easier because of his discipline. He's just a little bit stronger because he's, you follow kind of what I'm saying. It might be a stretch, but
I would love to see that. I personally would love
the Mandalorian also, like, he kind of, when he first got the saber, he kind of didn't necessarily care. He didn't want that honor. He was sort of like, well, you want it? You can. Yeah, I don't know. Just kind of curious what you guys thought about that,
Jeff. Too. I don't think you're that crazy. I don't think this because here's what it does. I think dramatically, and as far as the utility of the characters, it gives a potential conclusion or a little wrap up to Boba's story. It sends Boba off to claim the mantle of rightful ruler of Mandalore. And you could always go back and revisit that and see how that, check in on that and how that's going. But then it also frees Din Djarin to go off and have his Mandalorian adventures, whether they're with or without Grogu. So it takes the chains off of him, because if he is the one that's going to bring unification to Mandalore, then, you know, that really puts him in a box as far as where that character and where the series is going to go. I think you're the call of the night, man. I think that you might have cracked this.
I think it also gives Boba Fett the crown back, because we also, you know, when we're like, oh my God, the Mandalorian, this guy is like better than Boba Fett. And then they reintroduce Boba Fett and we see like, oh no, Boba Fett's still the kind of the king. You know what I mean? Like he took out all the stormtroopers and, you know, tricked the Mandalorian, you know, and I don't know. I get the sense like, and like you said, you know, it also, not a power struggle, but it puts Boba Fett back at the top while keeping the Mandalorian just as cool.
Yes.
And moving on with his journey.
And it pays off some of the leadership, the more advanced leadership traits that Boba is exhibiting. You know, some of the more mature things like forgiveness and empathy. You know what I mean? And empathy, yeah. So it sets him up to be quite a capable leader of people, which is not what he's, you know, right now doesn't seem like that's something he's into it. But if the prophecy chooses him, it also goes and really establishes or reestablishes Django as, you know, he's now the father of the rightful ruler of Mandalore. I mean, it really does a lot to sort of bless that whole lineage. That's cool, man. I like that a lot. That's really, really good thinking. Great idea. Great call. Thank you very much. You're always welcome here. Travis, that's very kind. Travis just sent us $10. Thanks, buddy. Here's Thanks, Jeff. Travis. Jeff says, doesn't Din know what happens when you walk on a narrow catwalk with no guardrail in Star Wars? You die! Get off that catwalk, Manto.
That's what they make jetpacks for.
Yeah, and he takes the jetpack off when they're fighting.
This is true.
You know, that was true. Like, man, that was bad to the bone. 4 Midwest guys, we're 2 Midwest guys, says the Armorer is always expanding and dropping new lore around Mando. Do you think she knows a prophecy that Mando was the chosen one to restore Mandalore? That's possible. It's possible. Yeah, I can't help but think that that's one likely place it's going to go. But then, you know, our last caller just made, I think, a really good case dramatically for that to maybe be Boba. Maybe it
might happen to Boba. I mean, he is the titular character in this show.
Right.
And so you have to think that a lot of the big events that were foreshadowed in this episode, and there were a lot of big events foreshadowed in this episode, I think they're all going to surround Boba Fett. And I do like the idea of the Darksaber eventually falling into his possession. And Boba Fett becomes the one to unite the Mandalorians. Oh my God. From Jabba's palace in Tatooine, Boba Fett is going to unite the Mandalorians and bring back their warrior ways. It could happen. I think that Din Djarin is so reluctant to carry on with that responsibility. It's not something he's more than Boba. He's a simple man trying to make his way through the universe. I don't think Boba's that much of a simple man, you know?
Maybe Fennec ends up running Jabba's empire.
Well, she's definitely...
I think she's more cut out for it
right now. Yeah,
more cut out for it than Boba, frankly.
She embraces the gangster lifestyle a little more than he does.
For sure.
But she is subservient to him. You know, at the same time,
indebted
because he did save. Yes, I guess I should say indebted. And
she have the lice play from Dis and Hissin.
Dis and Hissin. Okay, you know it doesn't take much to, put the nickel into the monkey and watch it dance.
David says, I think the lack of space for bounties in the modded N1 foreshadows that Mando, like Boba, will no longer be a bounty hunter. Thanks, RFR. Yeah, we were talking about my covert here in House Swank. We were talking about what if Mando accepts that as his ride, like he's going to have a place to crash. He can't crash in that. It's not a it's not a what did they call it? Shoot, there was a name for the type of ship. She says you're used to flying a gunship. A gunship where there would be. Yeah. So he'd have to change his lifestyle.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously he didn't want the N1 starfighter. He was there under the impression she had a Razor Crest for him.
Right.
So I think that's what he likes. And I think he'll continue his quest for the crest. But he did exhaust his manifold flying that N1 fighter, if you know what I mean. As she said, you hit this button and you'll exhaust your manifold. Isn't that what she said? Which means you're going to crap your pants, basically. Is how I interpret it.
Right. Yeah.
And so that had to have impressed him, especially the way he ran from the cops.
Oh, that was great.
Scot-free.
That was great. Oh yeah, it's right here.
He can stick with that ship. Maybe he'll get a bigger ship that he can actually dock the N1 starfighter into, if that is something that he's into. Get a big freighter.
I didn't realize that they could go to hyperspace without a ring, because they're such a small ship. The Jedi starfighters required the hyperspace ring that they would jump. And then when they see the TIE fighters, they're like, TIE fighter couldn't get this far out in space without,
well, keep in mind those N1 starfighters were developed for royalty, so there was unlimited funds to develop that kind of technology for those starships that the Jedi just probably simply didn't have access to, and they probably figured, they were so arrogant about their connection to the Force, they probably figured, we don't need hyperdrive. We can use these hyperdrive rings. No, what's going to happen? We're Jedi, for crying out loud.
Yeah, but if somebody blows up your hyperdrive ring, you're screwed. Hey, one more call we want to take because we got who we got here. This is Edgar from Florida, first time caller and a Patreon member. He wants to chime in about this idea that Jeff had about Boba being the rightful ruler of Mandalore. What say you, Edgar?
Hey, so something that spoke out to me in the beginning was that the armorer was talking about the prophecy that the Mandalorian, or the one who would be wielding the sword, would be riding a beast, or the mythosaur, what they were talking about.
The mythosaur, right.
And I was thinking that the build-up from the previous episode of the Book of Boba was the Rancor. And if there's this big showdown and Mando is with Boba on the Rancor, that Mando would see Boba being this almost godlike, ruler, and seeing that maybe this is the prophecy that was spoken to him from the armorer.
That's cool, man.
That's pretty much it.
That's cool. No, you know what? You don't need much more than that. That's awesome. Thank you very much. I think that is another feather in the cap of this theory. And again, it's all theory. It's all theory, guys. And that's what makes this fun. But Book of Boba Fett makes sense. And then also, if that's the place where they're taking the story, Jim, then you can't argue with the fact that they brought Mando into the Book of Boba Fett. You'd have to, because you got to follow the path of the Darksaber, and that's where it leads. If this is about establishing Boba as the rightful Mando ruler.
Yeah, it really appears that that's the direction his character is taken on as a priority, is the Darksaber. First it was Grogu, and now it's this Darksaber. Din Djarin has this incredible skill for having very important things dropped into his lap. And he just, he just wants to go on and do his thing and make his money and go on to the next bounty. And so, again, I'll quote Jango Fett. I'm just a simple man trying to make my way through the universe. I never really felt that so much from Jango, because he was involved in some very big intergalactic scandals, really. And Din Djarin, now he is a simple man trying to make his way through the universe. And the universe keeps throwing all this crap at him, and he's just trying to make sense of it and go on to the next gig. And I think that will show itself in the Book of Boba Fett as we see Boba Fett rise in importance as far as his connection to the planet Mandalore and these children of the Watch and all of their prophecies and everything else. I think Boba is the man who's going to fit the bill more than Din Djarin. And before this show, I don't know if I was going to be coming to that conclusion on my own. So I want to thank all of our callers tonight, all of our super chats. You guys have given us a lot of food for thought. Before we sign off, I think we still have a couple of super chats there.
We do.
Waiting to be read.
We do. I want to get to this one in particular. Lads, it's the crew at Kessel Run Hair in Sith, Australia. While we're working.
South.
Boy, it's a Star Wars show.
We have Star Wars on the mind here at Rebel
South
Force Radio,
Australia,
so
listening while we're working. We haven't stopped talking about last night's show with all our clients. Free haircuts. If you hear this on RFR, cheers, Marco, Michael, Jesse, and Matt. Okay, I want anyone within the sound of our voices, right? Because they spent $40 on this super chat. So that's what? 2 haircuts, 3 haircuts? Anyone within the sound of our voices from South Australia, please look up Kessel Run Hair. Go get a haircut. Go get a free haircut. In fact, if they offer it to you for free, say no. We're paying. We're paying. Where else are you going to go to get a haircut? Kessel Run Hair, South Australia. Love you guys. Thank you very much. Yeah, go get your hair done. I
wonder if you could go in there and like ask for, can I have a Qui-Gon, please? And they give you that little ponytail in the back.
So. Right.
Can I have an Obi-Wan? How about a Luke Skywalker? Feathered hair. How about that? That would be so nice. Can you give me the Leia buns? Give me the buns. I want the buns. That's what they do at Kessel.
Imagine an
nothing but Star
hair
Wars
studio. It's all hairdos based on Star Wars, or at least being able to do it. That's great. Here's Sean.
Set me up with the Saw Gerrera ASAP. Let's go. Saw Gerrera me. Before I got my haircut, I kind of
You could have totally done the Saw Gerrera. Could Billy Mack cosplay? Could Billy Mack cosplay a Saw Gerrera?
Deceptions. No, Billy Mack is what would Billy Billy would be a good Pelimoto with I think of it, got that curly hair.
He'd have to white out the eyebrows. You notice she has no eyebrows?
No eyebrows in space.
Well, they must have burned off in some of her, going to, fixing those engines.
On a starship.
Yeah. Here's Sean. He says the glyphs on both sides of the N1 wouldn't be the same. When I was an F-15 crew chief, geez, now.
Oh.
We got the real deal here, guys. When I was an F-15 crew chief, the jet had pilot's name on one side and the crew chief's on the other. So, okay, there you go. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't necessarily be the same.
Is that way in auto racing as well? Sometimes you see the crew chief's name on the car along with the driver. So that's a good point.
Chris Have just sent in with a super chat. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate
Chris.
that. Here's Ryan. He says, was this episode that Ming-Na got confused? Oh, was this the episode that Ming-Na got confused from Mando episode when it was Book of Boba Fett episode? Did we have a clip where she seemed confused?
She said when her first day on set, she had assumed she was there to shoot the next season of The Mandalorian.
Right.
It wasn't until she arrived on set when she realized it was going to be another series, Book of Boba Fett. So I don't think necessarily no. Mm-mm.
Unless you saw Pedro hanging out. By the way, Jim, you claim to know when it's Pedro under the helmet. Was this Pedro at all in this episode that you could tell?
I haven't watched it enough to really look closely enough to tell, but I'm sure that he was involved in some of this on set. Yeah.
There were a few shots. I know you've mentioned that he's a little thicker. I mean, I'm not about putting anybody down. I'm just saying there are tells, and I did notice. I thought that there were some scenes where, maybe he was. Look, it happens to all of us. Yeah. This is from Ben Riley. He says, I loved Mando ignoring his clients' invites to dinner. Sorry, losers. Mando doesn't party. Yeah, I like that too. Yeah, no thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. Matt Baker says
he's not hungry.
No,
He
he's
had a
not.
big
He'd have to
lunch.
take the helmet off to eat. You can't sit there and eat.
Right. Yes.
Oh, I see what they're doing.
He's already
there.
violated that once.
Oh,
Twice
yeah,
before.
right. You're not going to get me again, he says. Matt Baker says, I really like that idea from the caller. Mando is a hunter and Boba is a leader. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like that too.
Yeah, that gives you a lot to think about, doesn't it?
Totally. John Rossi says, I think Luke may teach Mando how to use the Darksaber and train him, and he'll use those skills to help Boba. I think it's likely that'll happen. I don't know that it'll be a big deal. I mean, it'll be a big deal to us, but I don't know it'll be like serious training. It might be kind of a humorous little moment where he gives him some pointers in swordplay or something like that.
I think Mando already has the knowledge he needs to
You think
be
so?
able to work with that Darksaber. Yeah. I think the training has already happened with the armorer.
Yeah.
And he's just going to work on that discipline now.
Super chat from, excuse me. Super chat from, whiskey went down the wrong pipe. Super chat from Ethan. Thank you very much, Ethan.
Ethan Askew. View Askew from Ethan.
Benjamin says, amazing episode, guys. Love the deep dive into the Mandalorian history. Had potential Force-sensitive vibes from the armorer. Maybe. Is this the way? LOL. No. I don't.
No.
I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
I don't.
But
I don't.
the Force
see.
does work. The Force does work in mysterious ways. So
It does indeed.
she just seems very spiritual and locked into her Mandalorian fundamentalism. But
Spiritual, yes, yeah, for sure.
Maybe the Force connects with her in a way that's similar to how the Force connected with Chirrut in Rogue One.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. Sometimes you may not even be aware that the Force is working through you. Captain Rex says, Luke had to take so much time with Grogu, it caused him to neglect Ben's training. Kidding, but would love to see Din and Grogu saber train with Luke. Jim, you made the point earlier about, this having nods to Star Wars all over the timeline, but not nothing that sort of, lined up with the sequel trilogy. Do you think we'll ever see any kind? Because my kids were asking me this too. They had the same reaction you had about, oh my gosh, is Baby Yoda there when Ben betrays Luke and kills all of the Jedi? And do you think they're going to go that far? I mean, do you think they're going to make that connection? I mean, where are we going to see? In other words, are we going to see a young Ben Skywalker? Are we going to see? The beginnings of this new Jedi Order that Luke's trying to build. They're going to go that far?
How old would Ben Skywalker be at this period of time? I don't think he's old enough to be trained as a Jedi. If they're looking for a teenaged Kylo Ren or Ben Solo, they should track down my buddy Caleb Malice, who is a teenage actor in Hollywood, and he looks just like Adam Driver as a kid.
Just like him.
So
it's uncanny.
That's who I would suggest they call right away if they're looking to cast a young Kylo Ren. But it just does. It seems too young. He seems like he'd be, if he even exists at this point in the timeline, 5 years after Return of the Jedi. When
were Luke and Leia getting busy? Or Luke and Han. Were Han and Leia getting busy that quick?
Well, of course you were getting
Well, we know
busy,
that wasn't Poe Dameron conceived on the night of the Ewok celebration on Endor?
Yes.
I thought so.
Poe actually, was.
He was conceived in the Ewok village.
In the Ewok village, Well, think of how many kids. I mean, there was such a baby boom after that.
Well, right.
A lot of Ewok village kids running around out there. But I think right now, I mean, if Ben Solo exists, he would be an infant. Right. And we know Luke didn't take him in as an infant.
A little Easter egg, of Grogu, like kind of walking over to a crib or something and peering at the baby, baby Ren, baby Kylo.
What are you looking at?
Where? I'm hungry. All right. Anthony says, do you think Mando will get... Oh, I love this. Do you think Mando will get Slave One from Boba? Maybe trade ships. Mando needs a bounty collecting ship, I'm thinking. So what if you were the king of Mandalore, the rightful owner or rightful ruler of Mandalore, would you need the Slave One anymore? Maybe not. Maybe he gives it to Mando.
Yeah, but that was his dad's ship. I mean, think about it. You know, he seems very connected to his dad. We keep seeing in those flashbacks. He's lying there in the bed in Camino, and the Slave One takes off from the landing pad. He runs over to the window, pushes his hand up against the window, and watches as his dad abandons him again to go off on an adventure. I just think that the Slave One has too much of a personal connection to Boba Fett.
Maybe that's why they're renaming it the Fire Spray. Well, we know why they're renaming it the Fire Spray, but maybe this is an in-universe way to justify renaming the ship.
Well, the Razor Crest never had a name. Keep in mind,
right?
He never
it's a model of a ship.
The Razor Crest. It's like, where's my Cadillac? You know, it doesn't have.
Well, that's very vague. There are a lot of Cadillacs around here, sir. Paul Kurtz says, wait, so Bo-Katan was given the Darksaber because she's an entitled rich girl? Bo-Katan? More like Bo-Karen. Am I right, boys?
Yeah, you're right.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't given it to her because she was rich. She was given the Darksaber because the belief at the time was that her family was the rightful rulers because she was the sister of Sabine. Or not Sabine, Satine.
Yeah, right.
And it was sort of in honor of her. She was assassinated, and she was fighting for, pacifism and that sort of thing. So,
well, so that's what Satine was all about, but Bo-Katan was not. There was a split between the sisters.
Yes, but I think didn't Bo-Katan sort of come around to honoring her sister? I mean, maybe not agreeing with her, but certainly came around to.
Yeah, well, she obviously loved her sister, but I don't think she ever came around to thinking that the pacifism way was the right way because, I mean, she continued to wear the armor and carry on like a traditional Mandalorian. She's from the Death Watch, which is so interesting.
But she sort of renounced the Death Watch.
She must have, because the Death Watch is what the Children of the Watch splintered off from.
Yes.
And so, but the Death Watch themselves, they were very loosey-goosey with the this is the way business. They Pre Vizsla walked around with his helmet off all the time. So what kind of traditional Mandalorian was he? I don't think he was as
find
pure
out
in his
on next
belief
week's
about
episode.
Yeah, that's probably how it's gonna go. Yeah. We'll get Pre Vizsla. He'll come back. Yeah, you thought I was dead? No way. No, he is dead. He is 6 feet under. I don't want to throw that out there. But
Shayna chimes.
It's still a little confusing.
Yes. Shayna jumps in here with a super chat. You think they'll name the N1 starfighter her? Her.
Like the musician? Her?
I don't know. I'm not getting the reference if there is one. Unless Shayna means like some ultra politically correct name. So that I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Maybe, but still, super chat appreciated. Maybe we're just a little too thick to get the reference. Oh my gosh, this was lots of fun this week. The super chats, ultra generous, great calls this week. Wow, Tyler, I don't know what you did to get such great callers, but they were fantastic. It started with Jeff and his theory about the possibility of Boba Fett being the rightful. What do you think about that theory? Boba Fett takes the throne of Mandalore.
It could happen, but I'm not gonna be sold on anything. To be honest, our callers are so much smarter than me because my jaw was just on the floor. I'm still picking my brains up from the episode we just saw, so I'm still digesting. But I will agree with you, Jason, in that I think if this was a Mando episode, this would be a filler episode. Or fans would deem it a filler episode.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't think there are no filler episodes in my book, but I think fans would deem it that.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. All right, last super chat just came in under the wire. Scott Hansen says, is it me or does Book of Boba Fett have the most or only montages in Star Wars film shows? I don't recall montages being a Star Wars thing. Am I right? Jim, montages in Star Wars?
Yeah, when George tweaked the special edition of Return of the Jedi, there's a montage there at the end when you see all the planets celebrating the demise of the Empire. Yep. And that's just one that jumps right to my mind. Other montages, I think they're few and far between in the Star Wars universe, but this is television Star Wars. I think a lot of people demand cinematic standards from television Star Wars. It's just not going to be there. These shows aren't made with $100 million budgets. They just aren't. And so I just think, when I see people comparing things that happen in The Mandalorian to things that happen in the Bourne Identity movies or Marvel movies, MCU stuff, it doesn't add up to me, because I think everyone understands the difference between film production and television production. And I think that's we're kind of going through this transitional stage of Star Wars fans having to deal with Star Wars on TV as opposed to in the theater. And we will be noticing those differences along the way. And you have to make room for that stuff. You just have to, because the budgets aren't there. Even Kyle Newman got pissed off at me for talking about budgets when it comes to Star Wars, and how Kyle thinks the budget should be unlimited for any Star Wars show. But I mean, he's a filmmaker. He knows it doesn't work that way. Nothing does. So that's all I have to really say about that. I mean, if you're going to be looking at Star Wars shows, you have to look at them as television shows and not movies. That's just a fact.
Yeah. By the way, just got a little fact check here by Kevin Lyle. He says, no, actually, Poe was conceived on Yavin. Who knew? I thought there was a connection to Poe. I know Poe's parents were in the Battle of Endor, and they were partying at the Ewok village, but
that's where they were stationed. They were both members of the Rebel Alliance, and that's where they were stationed during the Battle of the Death Star 2. I believe if you look at the end of the Marvel Comics Shattered Empire, it alludes to. I think Lyle's right. Though. I mean, he may have been conceived at the Jedi or at the Ewok village, but he was
born on Yavin.
Born on Yavin. Because I remember this. I remember Oscar Isaac even commenting on this, saying he thought it was so cool that the backstory for his character has him being born on Yavin, because Yavin was shot in Guatemala, and that is where Oscar's family originates from. And so he just thought that was a cool connection. So I think Kevin's right about that, but Jason's saying conceived. Yeah. So I think, right after the Death Star blows up, no better time than that to start, bumping uglies.
Wasn't the only fireworks going off in the Ewok village that night.
Yes. and then
Yub Nub.
The Dameron settled down on Yavin, and that's where baby Poe was delivered. We'll have to research this.
All right,
we
more
might talk
research
about this a little more on the
Okay.
weekly.
All right. Hey, thanks for hanging with us here on the Rebel Force Radio Book of Boba Fett After Show. Fun episode. Really great episode. I mean, I think that it says a lot about this show that many are calling this the best episode yet, and it didn't feature the title character. That's something that I think they need to address. They need to look long and hard. But we still have 2 more episodes, and we will reserve, of course, final judgment for then. But I don't know. It's looking shaky to me if we judge it based on if you look at it in the broader Favreau-Filoni verse, that's one thing. But as a show, as a project, I don't think that it's looking great. We'll just put it that way. Not that it's bad, but not great. That's my take. Jimmy Mack, any final thoughts you have on this episode?
All right, Jason, final thoughts on Return of the Mandalorian. I still don't think that this is the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett. I reserve that for the second chapter featuring the Tuskens and the train chase and everything, but that's my personal opinion. At least we didn't get any mod Vespa speeder chases in this one. I think everyone's happy to be off of Tatooine for once and go to that crazy space station. Now, a lot of people were saying looked very influenced by the space station, the Wheel from the old Marvel comics. I could see that. It was never identified as that, but I could see it. I thought the meat packing plant was very earthly, down to the plastic strips dividing the cooler from the rest of the facility. And but the way they used it was so great when you had Din Djarin emerge from behind there in the silhouette. You're thinking it's Boba Fett, but then he emerges from between those plastic strips, and you get that Ludwig Göransson identifying Mandalorian theme. Well, just the little fanfare, I should say, that instantly identifies him. The use of music in this series is just as great as it was in The Mandalorian, in my opinion. I don't think we talk about it enough, but the meatpacking plant, I was looking and for all the detail and everything. I want to see Sly Stallone back there punching the slabs of meat with Paulie, and those guys, those Klatooinians, they were wearing clothes right out of the meatpacking plant here on Earth. From the
they were at the Sugardale Meat Factory here in yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, they were those very earthly moments with those Klatooinians in there, and while it didn't take me out of it, I just noted it was very earthly. Fluorescent tubes lighting the room and stuff. It came off as very earthly, but I thought it was a lot of fun, and I was really surprised at the brutal violence that the Mandalorian was displaying there in that sequence. I think it is because we've been seeing so much of Boba Fett being so benevolent and not really leaning toward violence, and then here you have pretty much the most violent moment of season 1 of the Book of Boba Fett. It might just be the only season of the Book of Boba Fett too. We don't know. The way it certainly was absorbed by the Mandalorian makes me think that this is going to be the only season of the Book of Boba Fett, and it only appears to be Mandalorian season 2.5 now. The Mandalorian can only be redeemed in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore, which no longer exist. But I just thought that was interesting. Why? Why can he only be redeemed by going there? Is this like a baptism sort of thing that he's going to have to undertake? Is that, I mean, what does he do? Come back and say, yeah, I swam in those waters, now I'm clean? I don't understand really how that works without big ceremony involved. I noted that in Tatooine, you could see the arches in Mos Eisley that were based on a Ralph McQuarrie design for arches at Jabba the Hutt's palace. We never saw them at Jabba's palace necessarily, but we do see them on Jakku in The Force Awakens, and here they are on Mos Eisley. Pelly said the N1 is faster than a Fathier, and that took me a moment. There's your connection to the sequel trilogy. The Fathier.
There it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
There is a connection there. There is a connection. And there's a connection between Pelly and Jawas because she dates them and says they're quite furry many times. So,
that's what all my former girlfriends said about me.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Again, that N1 rebuild was over 10 minutes long. And so that's cutting into the episode substantially by over 20%. And I just felt that, I saw people online saying, complain about one thing about this episode. I dare you. Well, I felt like the N1 Starfighter thing went on just a little bit too long. But the payoff was awesome. So it's okay. It's fine. It's not a big crime against society. I can roll with it. It's fine. Foreshadowing, so much foreshadowing in this episode. Grogu, he's going to be given armor. Din Djarin is going to go see Grogu. All of that stuff is going to happen probably in the next episode. I think it's very important that they were reaffirming with us the idea that Jedi can have no attachments. I think that's a big clue about Grogu and his Jedi training. I think we are going to find that Luke, as I said earlier in this episode, Luke is not having the easiest time in the world training Baby Yoda because he has those connections. The Darksaber and its fate was, there's a lot of heavy foreshadowing about that in this episode, about Din returning to Mandalore, about Mandalore rising up again with the mythosaur that has never risen before. I think all of that stuff is setting us up for a big payoff in these final 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett, especially that reclaiming Mandalore stuff. And our callers are so great tonight. I mean, you guys have given me so much food for thought. I'm considering things that I wasn't considering before this discussion happened. So I want to thank everyone for calling in, all of our super chats. You guys are amazing. Boba Fett, not in this episode.
I love it. All right,
I've been
Tyler.
waiting the whole show to say that.
Tyler, thanks as always. Appreciate your help. And thank you, everyone watching and listening. Really, really appreciate it. We'll be back next week for more Book of Boba Fett. So please join us. Got 2 more episodes. And also don't forget to subscribe to the flagship show, Rebel Force Radio. It's available wherever podcasts are found. So we'll see you next time. For Rebel Force Radio, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you, always.